It started with a scream. Not a distant, muffled sound you could dismiss, but a sharp, blood-curdling scream that cut through the stillness like a blade. It came from just outside the bedroom window, piercing the quiet night. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. This weekend getaway in the secluded cabin was supposed to be my escape from the endless grind of city life. I wanted peace, solitude, and silence. Now, as the echo of the scream faded into an eerie, unnatural stillness, the isolation felt more like a trap. The first sign that something was wrong came earlier, with the mirror. It hung in the bedroom, an antique piece with an ornate, curling frame that looked like it belonged in a haunted mansion. At first, I admired it, thought it was a nice touch for a rustic cabin. But then, strange things began to happen. Every time I glanced at the reflection, something was off. Not with me. I was there looking as tired as ever, but with the room behind me. It was subtle at first. A painting missing from the wall, the lamp slightly out of place. I dismissed it, blamed it on exhaustion or a trick of the light. But now, after that scream, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror wasn't just reflecting the room. It was showing me something else. Something it wanted me to see. I approached the window, cautiously pulling the curtain aside. Nothing but the dense, suffocating trees. The forest loomed, dark and silent, like it was hiding something just out of sight. My gut churned with unease. I stepped back from the window and turned to face the mirror again. And there, behind my reflection, stood a figure, tall, motionless, its face obscured in shadow, but its eyes, two glowing white eyes, locked onto mine through the glass. My blood turned to ice. I spun around, but the room was empty. There was no one there. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure had vanished. Panic surged through me, my chest tight and my breath shallow. Was I imagining it? No, I had seen it. Those eyes. They had been so real, burning through me like cold fire. I backed away from the mirror, my hands trembling, but I couldn't stop looking at it, couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. I heard it then, a knock. Slow, deliberate. From the other side of the door, my heart leaped into my throat. No one should have been there. The nearest town was miles away, and I hadn't seen another soul since I arrived. Another knock. Louder this time, more insistent. I edged toward the door, my hand shaking as I reached for the knob. My mind screamed at me to stop, to turn and run, but my body wouldn't listen. I twisted the knob, opening the door just a crack. Nothing. The hallway beyond was empty. I slammed the door shut, my breath coming in ragged bursts. Then, in the reflection of the mirror, I saw it. A note. A crumpled piece of paper taped to the door behind me. I turned around. There was no note, but in the reflection I could see it clearly. Get out now. My stomach dropped. Before I could move, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then they went out, plunging the cabin into complete darkness. The silence was suffocating. My pulse pounded in my ears. And then I heard it, the faintest sound of breathing. Close, too close. I scrambled for my phone, but it was dead, the battery drained. My hands shook as I searched for the light switch, but I couldn't find it. The breathing grew louder, more ragged, like something was standing inches away from me. The mirror. I turned, barely able to make out the faint glow of moonlight reflecting off the glass. My reflection was there, frozen in terror. But behind me, just visible in the darkness, was the figure. Closer now. The glowing eyes were no longer obscured. They stared into my soul, unblinking, filled with malice. And then I saw it. The figure's hand, A long, twisted hand with sharp, blackened nails reached toward my reflection, hovering over my shoulder. In a blink, it disappeared into the darkness behind me. I bolted for the door, yanking it open, but the hallway was no longer the familiar one I had walked through earlier. It was endless, stretching into a yawning abyss. The floor creaked beneath my feet, and the walls seemed to close in around me as I ran, desperate to escape. But no matter how far I went, the hallway never ended. I turned back, breathless, and there it was. The figure stood at the far end of the hall, its glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The mirror had shown me what it wanted. The figure wasn't bound by reflections anymore. It was here, in the real world. I slammed the door behind me, heart racing, but I could feel it now. The oppressive weight of its presence, closing in. I ran to the window, trying to open it, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The lights flickered back on, but it was too late. In the mirror, the figure was no longer behind me. It stood right in front of me, its face inches from the glass, eyes gleaming with hunger. And then, with a low, guttural whisper that echoed through the room, it spoke. "You should have left when you had the chance." The lights went out again, and this time, they didn't come back on. What do you think really happened with the mirror? Was it just a trick of the mind? Or was something far more sinister at play? Have you ever experienced something that made you question reality? Something you couldn't quite explain? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. If this story left you unsettled, stay tuned. My next tale, The Room Beneath, will take you even deeper into the unknown. You won't want to miss what's waiting in the dark. It wasn't supposed to be there. When I bought the house, the real estate agent had called it a quaint little fixer-upper. A small two-bedroom cottage at the edge of town, perfect for someone seeking peace and quiet. I wasn't looking for perfection, just a place to call my own, somewhere I could escape from the chaos of life. For the first few weeks, it was perfect. No neighbors for miles, the silence only broken by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. But then I found it. The room that shouldn't exist. I was unpacking boxes in the basement, stacking them against the cold stone walls, when my hand brushed something unusual. A faint crack in the wall, nearly hidden by shadows. Curious, I pushed against it, and to my surprise, the wall shifted. Behind it, concealed under years of dust and grime, was a door, small and forgotten, like it hadn't been touched in decades. I hesitated. The house's blueprints hadn't mentioned a hidden room, but now, standing there, staring at the door, I felt an inexplicable pull. I had to open it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air that wafted up was damp and musty, like wet stone and mold. I stood there, flashlight in hand, debating whether to go down, but the urge to explore was too strong. Gripping the rail, I descended, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The stairs seemed to go down far longer than they should have. The basement wasn't deep, but with every step, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in. When I finally reached the bottom, I found myself in a small room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were rough stone, covered in strange writing. Words, names, dates, and symbols I didn't recognize. Some faded with time, others scrawled fresh, as if someone had been here recently. The center of the room held a single wooden chair, its legs uneven on the cracked stone floor. But what sent a chill down my spine was the writing. One name stood out, my name, written in red, smeared like it had been scrawled in haste. My heart raced. Why hadn't anyone mentioned this room? Why was my name written here? Before I could think, I felt it. A shift in the air. I wasn't alone. A soft scraping sound came from behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam trembling in my hand. The chair had moved. It was now turned, facing me. Panic surged through me, but I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I bumped it. Maybe the floor was uneven. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. I ran up the stairs, my flashlight flickering as I scrambled for the door. It wouldn't budge. Locked from the outside. I banged on the door. "Hey, open up!" My voice echoed, but there was no response, just silence, thick and heavy. I pressed my back against the door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. That's when I saw it. The chair wasn't in the center of the room anymore. It had moved, now just a few feet away from the stairs. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse in the dim light. My flashlight flickered again, casting erratic shadows, and then I heard it. A voice, a faint whisper, but unmistakable. "Come down." I froze, my blood running cold. The voice was soft, almost coaxing, but it carried something far more sinister beneath it. It was wrong. I couldn't place it, but I knew deep in my bones that voice wasn't human. "Come down." It was clearer now, more insistent. The chair creaked again, shifting closer. My breath was visible in the freezing air, and I could feel the temperature drop further with every passing second. And then I saw it. Movement. From the corner of my eye, something slithered across the floor. A shadow, thick and dark, dragging itself toward the stairs like smoke curling through the air. But it wasn't just a shadow. It was alive. "Come down." The voice was louder, almost a command. My hand frantically pulled at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The chair creaked again, now directly beneath me, waiting. Suddenly, I remembered something. An article I had read about the house's history. The previous owners had disappeared. No trace, no clues. Just gone. My stomach lurched. Had they found this room too? Had they been lured down the same stairs? I gritted my teeth and turned back to face the room below. The shadow had grown larger, darker, and from within it, 2 pinpricks of red light, eyes, stared back at me. It wasn't just a shadow. It was something far worse. The voice was louder now, a rasping, guttural growl. "Come down!" The door handle in my hand suddenly gave way, and I stumbled backward, slamming into the basement above. I scrambled to my feet, running, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the main floor. As I caught my breath, I turned to slam the basement door shut, but before I could, I heard it again. "You'll be back." I froze, every muscle in my body tense. The voice wasn't just coming from the basement anymore. It was in the house, everywhere. The walls began to creak, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to lengthen, stretching toward me. And then, on the wall next to the basement door, I saw it. The writing, fresh and glistening. Before I could even make out the words, the whisper returned, crawling through the walls and wrapping itself around me like cold fingers. "You can't escape." If you want to see more horror stories, check out my next video.